this, it'll be a little while. All right, looks like we are live now. Give it a few minutes as everybody kind of comes into the room. But for those of you that are already with us, I want to welcome my good friend and absolute beast of a listing agent, Colton Moos. He's with the #1 Keller Williams team here locally, specializes on the listing side. And just overall, not only does a great job in business, but great family man, has a beautiful family, always giving back to the community too. So I always see him serving in church and stuff. So always a pleasure when I get to spend time with you and learn all about, something we're both passionate about.
Yeah.
And that's real estate, and then how open houses fit into that, to where we can really provide maximum value, not only to our sellers, but also to our buyers. So with that, welcome. If you want to introduce yourself briefly.
Yeah, thank you. Those things are really kind of you. I would never spend a ton of time bragging about me personally, but I do definitely brag about the team, like you mentioned. And if I can do a little humble brag, we flirt in and out between first and second in a 5-state region for Keller Williams. So it just depends on the month. We're 1 or 2 typically, but not me. I'm just trusted, and I try not to mess it up. Thank you for the kind words right back, at this guy. See him volunteering, giving, and just try to be like him is more my goal. So
awesome. Well, welcome. We're super excited to have you on here. For those of you that want to see his professional mugshot there, that's Colton Moos. I'm Andrew Chavez. I'm a branch manager here with UMortgage Springfield. And today, like I said, we're going to be covering everything about open houses. So with that being said, let's hop right into it.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
All right, so we're going to be leading off with open house best practices. And for those of you that are following along, we're going to take this kind of chronologically. What does this look like, before you set up for the open house? What happens while you're there? And then what do you do post-close to really get more leads in that pipeline and grow your business?
Absolutely. And I think as we go through it, it's important we know what is realistic, right? And what open houses are. And typically, I mentioned this to Andrew before, it's a long-term lead, 100%. Very few are going to be someone you're writing an offer for that week, that month. But know that going in, and all of a sudden it creates opportunities that maybe you would look past before. So.
So you want to talk a little bit about like what you do when you're getting ready to set up for an open house, and let's just say this is your normal weekend open house. What are some of the things that you do to help drive engagement and really get people in that door and start getting them engaged with realtors or loan officers that can really start answering a lot of the questions that they might have, but they're too scared to go and search out a realtor or a loan officer to ask that question.
I think you bring up a good point there. I would start, we are great friends. My team on the Grady real estate team, my CEO had relationships prior, but I will say every open house I do, I am emailing that relationship, and we have a list of what the pre-qualification looks like. What's your monthly payment with this amount down, right? And it's got lender information. I have several lenders that I keep business cards, and I try to mix and match personalities. But that would be a first one as you're prepping throughout the week. That's a huge resource for you to use professionally for yourself, but also to build your relationships. I've had a few different people who have reached out to me and said, "Hey, Colton, these people got my information at your open house. I'm really sorry they already have an agent they're committed to, but thank you for the business." And all that stuff comes back around. But I think that's step one right there, is getting the proper documentation lined up. And a lot of times having a professional lender is a huge resource at an open house. And it's kind of funny. I take a lot of flack for this. I prefer first-time home buyer open houses. I don't prefer to go on, our price point. We're in Springfield, Missouri, so I know it's low, but our average is about $260,000, $265,000 on the average. I don't like to spend my Sunday afternoons at $700,000 and $800,000 open houses, and that's maybe my own limiting belief. I'm a little bit country. I'm not the most classy person. I think I fit the mold maybe a little bit better on some of the lower price points. But a lot of times I'm doing these first time home buyer open houses. They have no idea where to start. They don't even know what phone numbers are for what lenders. Should they call their credit union? Should they call a mortgage company? So being that resource is huge. And I love having all the relationships I have. I've got a few of these guys' cards in my open house box, and I see Gabe in the back. I've got some of his. I've got, several that I try to mix and match people's personalities. So that's step one. I'm reading some of the things I sent you, and it's actually with Keller Williams. We get fairly good training. They have levels of open houses, and one of the things they talk about is door knocking at least 100 doors in the neighborhood sometime that week. And they take it one step further sometimes, depending on your schedule, saying, hey, if you're talking to a neighbor, tell them you'll be there 45 minutes early and you've reserved the time for neighbors from, 30 minutes before till it starts. So that way, when you're actually talking to a neighbor or somebody that you might be able to pry on a little harder, that could be a good lead. I'm not saying I do that every time. I'm not perfect at it, but it's just a little tidbit that I've read.
Yeah.
And so
No, I think that's a really good thing. I can remember when I first moved into my home in Nixa, Missouri, and Nixa, Missouri is a little city that sits outside of Springfield, Missouri, and it's a small town, 30,000 people. But I remember that right after I moved in, there was a neighbor that was doing an open house, and there was a new agent. I think this was 2018, 2019. There was a new agent that came. She knocked on my door. She introduced herself, said she was doing an open house there in the area, and just wanted to learn a little bit. Hey, when did I move in? What are my future plans and stuff like that? And I thought it was I didn't realize it at the time because I wasn't in mortgage, but I was like, hey, that's really nice for her to stop by and let me know that they're going to be doing an open house. Looking back, I actually ran into that same agent a few weeks ago. She's one of the top realtors here locally. It was Kim Mooneyham.
Okay.
And, right
Fantastic.
when she was starting, I was like, you door knocked my house, 5-6 years ago. And I just think it's really cool to see agents that have, achieved that success. They're doing basics like, hey, before I do an open house, I'm going to go scour the neighborhood and I'm going to knock on all the houses and see, hey, maybe there's that one person that I can help, that they have a question that, how much my house be worth, or hey, we're trying to move, but maybe we're a little bit behind on the mortgage. What are some options? And you have an opportunity right there to help them solve some of their problems because, we're the professionals. And a lot of times, if we don't put ourselves in front of people will never be able to, learn some of the advice that we've learned through mistakes or, successes or, however that looks like. So I think door knocking is a really good thing if you have the time. I think, preparing your social media marketing, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. That's a portion of prior to that open house. Absolutely. And then getting everything set up. People love flags. I don't know what it is. I feel like every open house that I go to has flags, that's pulling in at least one or two people. If it's not a nosy neighbor, that flag is going to catch somebody's attention. So, getting your signs ready, getting your flags, whatever it might be. Sign-in sheets, getting your sign-in sheets. I've seen some real estate agents, they did these open house scorecards. So they did their listing, they had a picture of it, they had it marketed with their branding, and they had it here, and you could list the house. Okay, hey, 1 to 10. What do I love about the bedrooms, the kitchen, everything like that? That takes preparation, right? And if you're going to do 2 open houses a month, 3 open houses a month, whatever that looks like, you could be spending hours on that. So, I think it is very important. Like if that's going to be part of your marketing, as far as setting up and preparing, you kind of need to have that written down and kind of, know your game plan going into that. So, besides, some of the stuff like, sign-in sheets, door knocking, is there anything else that you think, pre-open house day that you do or that you've seen, other successful agents do to drive engagement with that open house?
Yeah, it's simple, but I can tell you this: I have 3 helium tanks in my home office, in my garage, or in the closet in my home office. I've gone through 2 of them. I have a 3rd one. I probably could refill them. I just haven't done the research to know if I can even do that. But, it's a simple, cheap hack. The tanks are like 30 or 40 bucks. A bag of balloons is $3, and that lasts me a whole year. So that's a simple thing. It's not necessarily going to drive a ton of people in, but if you're going to spend the time to go do all this stuff, to print, to prep, to put up signs, you might as well just tie a balloon on there and let it catch somebody's attention. Let them know you're there. And so I do that. You mentioned the social media. We'll hit on that a little bit later. But that's something that if we're going to talk about my biggest weakness, probably of this whole thing, it's the social media. And I know I should do better. It's just, I'm going on 6 years in this career, and I never did it before. So social media is all new to me. But I see a lot of people do really cool videos. They'll go do a tour of the home on a Wednesday, right? Post it on a Thursday, come see me open Saturday and Sunday type of stuff. All that is good, and we can get into some other stuff that I've seen in that as well. I want to hit on the sign-ins, and I know no one's going to be able to see this very good, but I think just a little thing that might help somebody. I put this in every one of my open houses that is not a vacant property. Okay. And what it says, I know this may be small, but it just says, for security purposes, Grady Real Estate requires all visitors to sign in. This is a very easy, like non-confrontational way that I can force people to sign in. If I'm standing at a house, people are still living there, they don't want random strangers seeing all their things unless we have a sign in. And this makes it easy. This is a cheat code, Now, that's just getting it signed. That's not going to make anybody your client, and that's going to be on you to show your value. But this is a great way to get people to sign in if you're not at a vacant home. It's just one of a few things we'll talk about. So
yeah, when you brought that in, I really like that because we do train our loan officers to kind of be direct, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that, like when they're in the open house. But this goes into that preparation. It's like, hey, how can I create certain marketing assets to where, hey, this is also a safety thing, but it's also helping me, capture the client lead data that I need to be able to make those follow-up calls and see if there's someone that I can help. So I really like that on there. I think we touched a lot of the pre-work into it. As an agent, when you're selecting, if you're selecting a house, you're like, hey, I want the most leads out of this house for a Midwest market like Springfield. What is like the perfect open house? Like if you're going there as an agent, you're like, hey, the pipeline's looking a little bit low. Like I need to get in front of people. What does that house look like in the Midwest?
In the Midwest, right? And I know this could be different in a lot of places. Here, it's probably in the ballpark of 200 to 300,000, maybe a little higher in some nicer finished areas. I really like one level. You think about a one-level home, it covers first-time home buyers because they're typically smaller. It can cover people who are retiring. It's going to cover investors, maybe higher-end investors that want a little nicer rental. It's going to cover maybe somebody who bought a really cheap house and they're upgrading just a little bit because they just had their second kid. All those criteria fit into that one-level $200,000 to $300,000 home. So to make it not Midwest, a little bit below and a little bit above your average price point in most markets, I would say. But you're going to get the most eyes on that type of property. I'm blessed. I'm fortunate. The team I work for, we typically have between like 18 and 20 houses we have held open in a week, and I get the cream of the crop. What I choose is what you just said, or what I just said. What I'm looking for is that one level, and I don't really want way out in the country on land, and I don't want to have to turn 8 different turns in a neighborhood to get to my open house. I want 2 or 3 turns off a main road, average price point that has a lot of buyers' eyes on it. It's always my go-to. Our team lists a ton. We just put a $2.3 million mansion under contract yesterday. Like, we list all the big homes. Those are just not the ones I choose to do at the open houses because I don't think they're as fruitful. I really don't. And I'll argue with anybody on that. So, but different strokes for different folks. So
yeah, I think that, that price range, for the Midwest, you could probably apply that to the West Coast, the East Coast. Like you're going to have a, first time home buyer and then first move up price range. And so, the single level, I think that's awesome that, you're like, hey, this is going to bring in the most people. It's going to have the most demand in the market. And if I'm going to take 2 hours, 4 hours on a Saturday or Sunday, I want to make sure it's worth my while. So another question I have going along with that, because, you're a big dog now. People call you to host open houses at your listings. However, let's rewind, 5 or 6 years when Colton was, brand new, getting started, trying to get that first listing. What's a good way that, new agents, maybe they don't have 18 to 20 listings sitting on the market right now. What's a way that, they can go do open houses maybe with other realtors listings, things like that. What does that look like in a practical sense? Someone's watching, they're a brand new realtor and they're like, okay, that's great, Colton, you have 18 to 20, but I'm brand new. How do I go get one of these? If you were
I love that question. And the obvious answer is you have to build relationships. No matter what market you're in. We always say this in Springfield, Missouri, we want to be the co-op agent of choice. So when somebody sends us a contract, we want them to be excited they're working with our team because our processes are fluid and it's like a machine and everyone's clear. Although not everybody can do that starting out, you want to build those relationships to where you're one of those co-op agents of choice for the bigger people in your market. Build the relationships with those people. And I could go on a really big rabbit trail right now. I'm glad you asked because I didn't figure out a way to word this in earlier, but one of my biggest pet peeves when somebody holds my listings open and I ask them for feedback, first of all, you should be sending it to me way before I ask. But if I ask on Monday morning and I haven't heard and somebody sends me back feedback that says, yeah, we had 6 people through. Some of the things people liked were the kitchen countertops were good. Some of the things people hated is they thought that the master bathroom was small. That gives me zero good data about each individual person that came through. So like I said, I can go on a rabbit trail about this, and I stole this from an old guy in our market, but I love it, and I've done it ever since. And if you're holding one of my opens, or holding one of my houses open, I want you to make a list of every single person that comes through. Middle-aged man, divorced, right? Retired couple looking to downsize, young family looking to get another bedroom, and then give me good feedback on that. And if you're giving that type of feedback to the bigger agents in your market, they're going to like your feedback and they're going to want you to hold their open houses in the future. Wow. And so, we see that all the time. I have unfortunately, this argument with people all the time, like, you have got to give me more info. I'm trying to please my seller. They want more feedback than you just telling me there were 6 people and they liked the garage. Like, go deeper, right, and take notes. And so just for the record, when you do have a listing, I think that's a good practice to give your seller. I think it's a great practice as you give other listing agents when you do get an open house opportunity.
Yeah, and I think it's so awesome that you're able to come on here today because that's something I would have never even thought about because I don't work in that area. And so, if you're sitting there, you get to hear from a big dog in a local market that says, hey, if you're a new agent, again, we have one of our core values is relationships over transactions. And you said it right there. It's like, hey, if you're a new agent, you need to build relationships. How do you do that? Something as simple as good feedback, saying, hey, we had 6 groups, they were middle families, and that's giving good feedback to the seller, to the listing agent, say, okay, here's the type of client that we need to market to, right? Because you guys have, you mentioned it, a bunch of great systems. We, we get a lot of deals because you guys hold a lot of listings where we're the lender and you guys are listing. And we love working with the Grady team because we know what to expect every single step of the way. And if Colton's not there, it doesn't matter. There's someone else that it does matter, but the systems are set up so great that it's like someone else can step into that role and still advise and get that contract to closing, and it's system driven. So I think it's really cool to see that hey, it's, you said the top 1 to 2 team here locally. It's like it's very process driven. So if you're sitting out there and you want to know how to impress the big agents so you keep getting all those listings, 18 to 20, that's a big number that if I was a new agent, I'd be calling Colton and like, hey, you got any open houses, single level? Like, here's what I'm looking for. I think that's great going into the preparation thing.
If you're in our area, we post them Tuesdays on the Facebook page. If they're open, have at it. Message the girl who posted it. She'll get you all set up.
Awesome. So that's great. Well, I think that really covers a lot of the pre-open house stuff. So, if you guys are watching along, if you have questions, maybe there's something that we didn't touch on, on the, before you get to the open house, drop a question. We're following along here live. So if you have a question, go ahead and drop a question in there. We said we were going to talk about social media, leading up to it. Here's my thoughts on social media with open houses. I think that social media, and this is purely my opinion, I think the social media posts around open houses are absolutely worthless to generate leads for that open house. However, what I always tell my loan officers is that people want to work with professionals and people want to work with people that are successful in closing business in their market. Your average consumer, they don't know the difference between you posting usually an open house, I'm hosting this, that it's your listing. And I know there's some ethics and there's some confusion like, hey, you need to post this. That again, I don't hold a real estate license. So
I don't know all those either. I could probably get fines all day.
Things I've heard. But, I think the big thing is this is for your sphere. The
Yep.
social media
Yep.
posting is for
That's
your
good.
sphere. It is to let people know that I'm a professional. I am at places where people are selling real estate, right?
Yep.
If I was selling cars, I'd probably be on a car lot, right?
Yep.
There's cars to sell there. So, I think it's very important every, open house, if you're a, up and coming agent or you're an up and coming loan officer, it's very important to post about every single open house. You gave a strategy that said, hey, there's some people that they do a walkthrough on Wednesday. They they post reels on Thursday. If you have that time and that's your passion, great. Like, I'm in the same boat with Colton. Is like, I don't really know a whole lot of social media. I'm still learning a lot about it. And so it's more difficult for me to do that. But hey, if that's your generation, if that's your thing, leverage it. Find what makes you unique, and then that's who the people that you're going to work with that kind of speak your same language. So I do think social media is very important, but it's maybe not as important as other people, or important like other people see it. So what are your thoughts, best practices on social media?
Like I said, this would be the one I feel in no way the expert to talk about this, but a few things I've seen, just talking from other team members as well, that can come up is like the surveys on your reels. So you're taking 2 different spots of the house, this or that type of thing. You get a lot of engagement. What I was going to say on this, because I think, yes, you have to post before and you have to do all that. One of the things I've seen huge, it just happened to one of the agents that was holding one of my houses open this past Saturday, is he posted a video. I don't know if he did a reel or story or what it is. I don't even know what either of those things are. But there was a video on his social media, and he had 2 friends that previously have not reached out to him on anything else related to homes, sent him a private message that said, that is a really, really cool, I don't know what it was. It could have been a banister coming down the stairs, I think is something he said. And they reached out to him and said, what's the address of that house? I don't know what it's going to lead to, but now he has a lead that did not reach out to him previously that has reached out to him based on that video. And he knows that's somebody who might potentially be looking to buy 6 months, something like that. He would have never got that lead if he didn't take the video at the open house he was holding at our house and then post it to social media. So I really think that's one of the best practices. And that's what I was going to bring up, because I see that time and time again is, use it to get, like you said, your sphere. Get people sending you messages that normally wouldn't or haven't in the past.
Yeah. And overall, like when we looked at the data, it was like, it's very little engagement. Like not a whole lot of people like these posts. Not a whole lot of people are commenting on them, but they're very high value, and it's letting people drip on them. Like, oh, hey, Colton, he sells houses. Andrew, he writes loans, and when they hear that over and over and they see, oh, they're out there, they're doing open houses, they must be a market expert. So that's kind of my thoughts on social media. I think we're both on the same page. We're not passionate about social media, but we understand the importance of it, because it's another way that you can get in front of your sphere or people that don't even know you, on a personal level. So moving past social media, we're at the open house, right? So we talked about, all of the setup, the social media. Now we have people coming in. So you want to talk a little bit, maybe, about some of the just little house setup things, flow that you kind of create before people even get in there.
Yeah, I've got a few different things I could hit on this. I will tell you, my typical open house, I'm reading some of this. I'll try to look at the camera more. My typical open house, I do have 2 sets of information set up. So I have like I said, a redneck. I've got a truck, Ford F-150. I've got a folding table in there at all times. I typically set that up right next to the front door if the space allows. I want a space where they have to sign in immediately. I've got the security purposes sheet. If it's a vacant home, I'm just going to ask them immediately as they come in. And once you do it enough times, you really don't care. You just do it, and you don't care if they're offended or what. But I have that right in the beginning. And then typically I try to set up a bigger, display of information in the kitchen somewhere. I don't want to hound people and I don't want to follow them, but I do want to make sure they are signing in, because if you don't get them fairly quickly, they have a chance to walk through and get out really quick without signing anything or giving you any information. So that's kind of my go-to. I love setting something up right by the door. At times, I'll hang this sheet that we were talking about. I'll put it on the storm door. I'll tape it on the storm door so they see it coming in, and I have had people read this and turn and walk away, and that's fine. I mean, I wasn't going to get them anyways. And if I got them, they're going to write a fake number down. So whatever. But I do that. And then, you had mentioned just setting things up. I brought another page, and I don't want to spend a ton of time on this because it's not about bragging. I mean, yes, I work for a great team, but I've got stats here, like, we've done 1.06 billion in sales since we started, just stuff like that. Our agents, we have 7 active agents on our team with 106 years of experience. The reason I hit on this is because the main thing about an open house is how can you provide your value and convince somebody that you have value within 10 minutes, because in another 10 minutes, they're going to another open house to meet with another agent who's trying to do the same thing. Now, don't get me wrong, I have a very awesome stat sheet here, and not everybody has that, and I get that, and I'm very spoiled, okay? But you have to figure out what your value is and how you can present it. I can tell you, if I was a solo agent not working for a big team, my value would probably be something like, no one's going to work harder than I will for you, and I'm the only person you're going to talk to in this whole transaction. That's not the case on our team. We have 4 different people at times that my sellers talk to as we go through the process. That's a negative to some people, and you need to use that if that's your value proposition. So you have to come up with something and have it staged. These 2 things, I have stands, and they sit on stands typically. They're out there. I'm not just laying it on the counter and hoping somebody sees it. So there's that. And then typically I've got a lot of lender sheets. Yeah. We do average utilities on all our properties that give us access. There's some counties in our area that won't give the agents access. They only let the sellers. So if the seller's busy, we're not going to hound them just to get their utilities, but I'll put average utilities on every single house I can out there. I'm going to put different competing neighbors. And, I mentioned this, and we'll talk deeper into this. You have to know what the inventory is all around you, right? How are you going to provide value if somebody comes in, they say, oh, it's a 3-bedroom, I really need more space. And you say, okay, great, thanks for coming in. Or every single 4-bedroom that's available in a 2-mile radius around that house. Hey, did you see this one on 32nd Street? It's a 4-bedroom around the same price. Do you want to see it at 5? My open house ends at 4. I can show it to you at 5. I'll call and make an appointment with that agent right now. Those type of things, it really creates value and shows that you're there to work, not just to stand there, shake a few hands and hand out a few business cards.
Yeah.
So
no, I think that's really good. And, like you said, like you have a big old, club that you can swing when you pull that stat sheet out.
Yeah.
But that's part of your value proposition.
Absolutely.
Like you're going to get the systems and everything. So I really love how that goes kind of towards your ethos, right? You're trying to say, hey, we're professional. Here is everything that we do. And I think that's important because we do kind of the same thing. We have a bunch of loan program sheets, client testimonials, things like that we stage with our, drinks and food kits that we have. And we stage in the kitchen, because we want most of the time real estate agents have their own sign-in sheet. Absolutely. But I would say about 30% of the time there's no sign-in sheet. And so,
may be more, to be honest.
Yeah. When I was talking over to my, with my loan officers on what the recent trends are, I know when I was doing open houses, it was like 50-50 that a real estate agent would have a sign-in sheet. And it was usually real estate agents that had been in the business 3 years or more that I knew they were going to be prepared. And that's just, there's nothing bad to say about new agents that maybe they hadn't had as many reps. And so, we want to have that stuff there. So as clients are coming in, it looks like it's a professional experience.
Absolutely.
And we're creating experience. We're not just there to like, oh, just come check out this house and, good luck, send an offer, maybe. No, it's like you're engaging, you're trying to build the relationships. And it's a great way to get in front of people that are in the market. So I think that's some really good stuff.
I think you want to know what they don't like always. Even if somebody says they have an agent, you can still talk to them. You don't have to solicit business, but you can still talk to them. And for the people who don't have agents, if you know what they don't like, go find it and promise them, look them in the eye and tell them you will work harder than anybody else to find that for them. Like don't just hand them a business card and say good day. It's simple, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I think, little things too, like when people come in, how you ask certain questions will help qualify them, right? So instead of asking like, are you working with a real estate agent? You could just say yes, instead of like, hey, what real estate agent are you working with? And if they're not, they're not going to just probably make something up right there on the spot. Your average person is going to be like, well, I'm not working with someone right now. Or, hey, who are you pre-approved with, right? Instead of saying, are you pre-approved? They're going to be like, yeah, I'm pre-approved. I'm good to go. It's like, who are you pre-approved with? It's a great way to kind of find out where they are and say, okay, hey, we need to follow up with this lead. They're not pre-approved yet. They're not working with an agent, and they're looking in our neighborhood. So I think, little things like that, like how you ask the questions, how you set everything up, it makes a big difference. I remember when I was doing open houses, the first thing I did when I got there is I started setting up the house, opening the windows. Houses smell weird and funny. And it's not really.
It's a good point.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a very good point.
And it's like
get there early.
We talked about it's like you're not always there and you're not always going to sell that house, but you still want to create an environment where someone's not like, oh, what's that smell? Like, I can't even talk to you right now, Colton. Like, you sound great. The stat sheet's great, but I just got to get out of this house.
Right.
And, so getting there, really setting up that environment, making everything look professional, it goes a long ways.
Absolutely.
To where someone looking at that is like, that's who I want to work with. It doesn't look sloppy. What is this transaction really going to look like if they can't even get an open house set up? So, I always encourage our loan officers, hey, show up early to open houses. Make sure you look professional with, everything that you're bringing if you're going to spend all that time to do it. And it's just a lot easier to talk to clients that way.
One more thing as you're hitting on that, I don't want to get myself in trouble, right? But I never ask any questions that lead them to say they're working with an agent. I want them to tell me, right? So my go-to, and I have had some really good success with this. Typically somebody walks in, I get the sign in, they start looking around, especially if they're the only ones and I have nothing else to do. I'm going to say something like, hey, how long have you guys been looking for your next home, right? And they might say 2 years, and maybe that leads to me to another question. They might say 1 week, leads me to another question. But eventually I'm just going to ask enough questions like that. If they are truly working with someone, which legally only 0.05 are working with someone because we don't get buyer, loyalty agreements signed. If you don't have a buyer loyalty agreement, it doesn't matter if they represented you to buy the last house 5 years ago. That is not your agent. You have to have the legal documentation, but so few actually have that. I'm going to ask all those prying questions a little bit. And if they do actually say, hey, well, I actually have an agent, I look with XYZ. Cool. I'll back off at that point. But like you said, I'm not just going to ask them, do you have an agent? And they say yes. And even if I go the one step further, which 75% of agents aren't going to do, and say, who's your agent? They just think of the first billboard they saw, right? But I'm going to ask all these other questions to try and get me on what they're looking for in their situation. And eventually, if they're working with an agent, they're going to tell me, The truth is most of the time they're not actively working with an agent, and people change agents all the time. Yeah. Hardly ever loyal. Yeah. And I think that, with the agent loyalty, it's like, if you can get someone to commit to go see one more house, their odds of them signing that buyer agency agreement is much higher. So, by being there, being in front of them, it's just a great opportunity to say, hey, you're probably not legally working with someone, but do you have that person that can show you the next house? So that's state by state too. Yeah. I just thought of that. Missouri,
we're not attorneys.
Missouri, you're supposed to always have the loyalty agreement signed. Other states, I know that's not really a thing. Yeah. So sorry.
All right. Well, moving on, sign-in system. We talked a lot about the sign-in system. Yeah. So let's talk, follow-up. So, there's been a lot of open houses that I've been to that we had nobody come through. Sure. And then there's been a few where we had 20 or 30 groups come through. And so, when you're collecting, it looks like you have a great system for ensuring everyone that comes in is getting signed in. But then what does follow-up look like? What are some things that you can do at the open house to really prepare those clients, those future clients for your follow-up?
Yep. My CEO says all the time, we're not selling houses, we're setting expectations. And that's what it's all about. When you're getting a new client, whether you've had a good relation or a good conversation with them at the open house or not, you start talking to them, you are setting that expectation, and if you have a great conversation, they're like, this is not the one for me. Hey, well, did you see this one with a basement down the street? You want to go look at it? No, not right now. We're just want to look at this one. Hey, that's great. How about I give you a call Tuesday? I'd love to hear more about what you're actually looking for. And I promise that we are the team to help you find what you're looking for in this area. Some people that could be too pushy for, and you have to kind of mirror and match, and you got to just decide based on the personality how aggressive to go. But you have to set the expectation up front, and that comes from actually talking to the people. We can't just get the sign in and let them do their thing and then leave. We have to have conversations. We have to provide our value. We have to know what's going on with them. And then from there, we kind of set an expectation. Hey, how about I text you tomorrow morning? Or how about I call you Tuesday afternoon? Setting some type of expectation. That's where you really see the follow-up actually happen, because the truth is the conversion on open houses is fairly small across the country, but it goes way up when you actually have a good conversation. You set some type of expectation when you're going to reach out next.
Yeah, and one thing that I saw a lot is when I was doing open houses is agents would tell me like, hey, I don't want to be pushy. Like I don't want to scare people off, right? And so,
True.
with the sign-in systems, I think that you can kind of be pushy in your own little way. And you showed a great example. It's like, hey, if you're not extroverted, like if you're a little bit introverted, that's okay. You can find ways to communicate with people and still collect that information. That's one way. And then on the follow-up, like, hey, if you're introverted, if you're not the type of person that's like, okay, I'm gonna call you, Monday morning, first thing. It's like, okay, hey, maybe set the expectation, like, hey, I'll send you a text on Monday.
Absolutely.
And then follow up with you. So is there anything, after you get their information in there to help with conversion? Like, do you guys put them in a CRM? How many times are you guys trying to touch them over the next 30, 60, 90 days? I mean, you guys are very system driven. So I would love to hear kind of how you guys approach that.
So we've experimented with that all over the place. And I will say you hit on extroverted versus introverted. One of the things I would say, a script we've used for our more introverted agents that's been very effective, do the rating sheet like we talked about, or Andrew's the one who brought it up. You can print out a sheet that says, how do you rate the price, 1 to 5? How do you rate the floor plan? How do you rate the finishes? And they're going to fill that out. And if you're introverted, one of the best things you can do is say, hey, I'm not really comfortable talking with that many strangers. If you'll fill this out for me, I promise I'll leave you alone and I won't be a car salesman. But if my seller does have questions about your feedback, do I have permission to call you and talk about it? All of a sudden, you kind of just hack the system. They think you're scared of them and they're going to put their guard down a little bit. Now you have permission to call them back. Now we don't know if they have an agent. There's a lot of things we don't know, but it's one follow-up there. So that's a rabbit trail. But to answer your question, we've experimented with it on our team, and how our team breaks down. We have 3 listing agents. We have 4 buyers agents. We have 5 people in the office on the phones at all times, making calls, setting appointments, following up with our clients. In the past, I've felt like I had really good leads that I got signed in, captured their information, gave them to the calling team, never heard from them again. What I have found is if I can set up some type of system, it depends on personality, but if I can talk to them once or twice, and then maybe they're not as urgent as we thought, if I can set the expectation of, hey, Claire is on our team. She calls all day. She's always available. I'm going to give your information to her, and she's going to keep in touch with you until you're absolutely ready. And then I'll get teed in, and I'll tag in. I'll come show you any house you want to see. Something like that. It's hard. I know I'm speaking to teams right now, and there's a lot of solo agents, but doing the first couple in my situation, then handing it off the team has been way better than just passing it on. I know that's kind of common sense.
Yeah.
But as far as conversion, all I could say is just going back to setting the expectation of when you're going to call, and then providing the value when you're there.
I think that's, even though that's how your team runs it, that is part of the process with solo agents, because they need to set the expectation, because most buyers aren't cash buyers. So maybe you're not setting the expectation with the dialer that's going to, get you on the next steps of the process. But, if you're a solo agent, are you connecting them with a lender? And so you need to set expectations that way. So, I think that, I love that that's what you guys say is like, hey, we set expectations. We don't sell real estate.
We don't sell homes. Set expectations.
Yeah, that's great, because, it's a way that you can kind of keep everyone level-headed. It's like, hey, here is what the reality of the situation is, whether there's a problem, whether, everything's going great. Here's the next expectation. So I think that's
what happens next.
Way.
What happens next? What happens next? That's a big line to say at all times.
Know what happens next, and then have a personable follow-up. I think is the other takeaway on that is like, hey, if you are on a large team and there is going to be someone that's going to be taking over that, really try to establish that relationship. If you're a solo agent, you can leverage that as what makes you unique. Your kind of unique selling proposition, like you had mentioned earlier, like, hey, I'm going to be 100% dedicated to you. I've heard some agents say, hey, I only take on 5 clients at a time, and then I'll see them closing 10 deals in a month. I'm like, that's really clever marketing, but because that's their value proposition.
That's good.
Like, hey, you're going to be my, I only take 5, right? So, I think that's very important.
I would just hit on too very quickly, have a CRM, right? And that sounds like it's kindergarten, but it is what it is. I'm blown away by people I talk to that, they've been doing it 2 or 3 years. Their CRM is a notepad, right? Invest in a CRM, get something to keep you organized so you know when to call people and you get reminders. It's not just on a yellow legal pad. So kindergarten, but seriously.
And the best CRM out on the market, hands down, 100%, like you should go buy this one tomorrow, is the CRM that you're going to use.
Oh, perfect. Nah, I was waiting there. I was on the edge of my seat,
there's hundreds of, probably thousands of great options, but I see, and I've fallen trapped to it too. Like, oh, that looks like a good CRM, but the best CRM that I've found is the one that I use. They all kind of do about the same thing. They text people, they set tasks, things like that. So I think that, that kind of covers the sign up, the follow up stuff. So kind of rolling in to the last few slides before we get some questions going here. We'll roll one more slide. So every Monday we have our Monday market updates. So if you guys follow us on social media, you can see what's happening in the market. I mean, right now, with all the inflation and stagflation talk and, the Fed saying, okay, hey, we started at maybe 7 projected cuts. Now they're talking, okay, maybe 2 cuts, maybe no cuts at all. It's very important to know, especially as real estate agents, what's happening on the list side, because as rates rise, even though I wish I could bring them down and control them, that affects buyers. That affects your buyer pool that's coming in and could put an offer on that. So, if you guys want to stay informed, you can tune in every Monday, follow us on social media, and you'll get the time on that. And we give a nice little Monday morning update. And then Arrive. So for any of you guys that have worked with us on Arrive, our loan origination system, it automatically tags in all of our realtor partners. So if you want to see, where your loan is, whether it's from an application intake or funded, you can pop right in there. And we try to give you guys full access, be fully transparent on our loan origination system. I think that's really all that I have. I really appreciate you stopping by and just sharing a lot of the practices that have built you guys into the #1 team here in Springfield. And so, hopefully there's some people out there that can take some of the things that you talked about, implement it in their business, and they can find success. So did you have anything that you wanted to share before?
No, that sums it up. I said in the emails, and we were going back and forth, if I had to put it on one, my #1 hack would be knowledgeable on what's available around and try to get people to go see it, because that's huge. People are not doing that, and be the one that does that. You bring up a good point here. It's like when I was doing open houses, I tried to learn about the schools in the area, just something to talk about. Hey, is there a pool in the neighborhood? How much does the HOA cost? Little things like that, especially on the loan side. When you know stuff about the neighborhood, the clients are like, oh, you not only know the loan side, but you're actually invested into this whole real estate transaction because you're local here. So, we have about 15 minutes left. So if there's any questions that anyone has, please drop them in the chat box, and we'll give it a few minutes here. Be careful, because I'm blunt and I'm an open book, so be careful what you ask.
You get the opportunity to ask anything that you guys want right now to Colton Moos.
Don't get me fined.
He can give you the real raw feedback on what listing agents get to deal with. Bunch of crazy loan officers. So,
no.
One thing I heard from one of my good buddies, Lex Kozlov, good listing side, is he talked a little bit about the differences between seller personalities and buyer personalities. And you work, really hand in hand with sellers, but you still in a way work with the buyers, but it's a whole different perception of what is happening on the buyer side. Do you kind of notice that too? As like, from your perception, do you think that, selling clients are much different, than the buying clients?
I don't have a ton of detail, but I would say maybe it's why I work better on the listing side, is because I feel it's more business oriented. Very few times do I sell a house and people are super emotional about it, but a lot of times people are very emotional about what they're buying. And a lot of times people, when they're selling, they've already found their next adventure, their next stop. So why would they be emotional about this one? Now, yes, you're going to have the family that's been there 30 years and raised their kids, but I do think the personalities, I don't have a ton of details, but I would say it's more business and to the point, which is more my personality. And I think on the buying side, it's a whole lot more like just building a deeper maybe friendship. It's weird to say, because I feel like I have great relationships with my clients, but they want to know the X's and O's and how to get it done. And it's not about, hey, how was your day and all those things, you know? So
you're more of doing maybe like emotional advising on the buy side more because, you know,
I would say so.
They're
Absolutely.
buying the 3-bedroom, 2-bath with the large lawn for, you know, the little kids to run around
Yes.
in. Where on the sell side, it's like, here's my net sheet. Like, I'm hiring you because you said that I'm going to walk away with 50,000, 100,000, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you're the person to get that done.
And I think most of the time people don't sell houses they love. Right. So it's like they're selling for a reason, and they probably are more in love with that reason than the house that I'm selling for them. But that's just my 2 cents.
Good stuff. Well, we really appreciate you coming on today. Doesn't look like there's any questions today. So we're probably going to start closing this down unless there's a question that comes in the next 5 seconds. So thank you very much.
Absolutely,
for
man.
being here with us today and looking forward to more transactions together.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.